Yeah, it's also how it says here, but instead of being an indoor burn, it's outdoor burn. It's full fires on the Amazon this month.
Oh, yeah, that's not cool. Sorry.
But yeah, how we are doing, guys? Thiago, Xavier, how has been the week?
For me, it's been with a lot of different tasks, but I was able to watch the YouTube videos and see the links you posted on HackMD, and also to start the cadCAD bootcamp. And that's what I have been able to do so far.
That's cool. And by the way, what are your thoughts about cadCAD so far?
It's very, very interesting because, systems thinking and this kind of things, and inside token engineering, since I've started to study blockchain and the possibilities, there's a lot going on in my mind, and I didn't have a tool to put that on paper, So Como and what's the name of the other? I forgot.
Inside lab.
Yes, to start making diagrams and token flow and stuff like that to see how it goes in the paper, and so that's been very interesting so far. And with cadCAD, I didn't have deep understanding yet, but I'm studying and seeing the applications.
Yeah, from my experience, the best way of learning cadCAD and so on is to get some existing demos and just to understand how they work in practice, like the Brand Predator demo or any existing model. Because I see a lot sometimes people that, let's say, try to understand too much, let's say, what's the nomenclature, but most of the time, because one thing that we always say, sometimes say, is that, for example, cadCAD is sort of an attempt in doing a more generalized modeling framework. And the thing about generalized is that it doesn't mean that you need to use everything that's being described. Sometimes it's easier to, let's say, just to get, let's say, a small subset, or just take a small thing and play with this small thing.
Yes, let's see how it goes till next week.
And you, Danilo, how has been the last week?
Very hot. I think every day I'm getting a little bit, my skin is getting a little bit darker. And I'm looking more like a native Indian from here. We had this let's say follow-ups on the model with Raul and Xavier, which was really nice. Actually, I was just like there. Raul and Xavier did most of the job, and I was just making the bridge with you. Hey, Danilo, can you take a look? Can you share something? And even though you were very busy, you always managed to give a thoughts. Like sometimes Danilo was like about to sleep, and he would take like 20-30 minutes to read it through and give his feedback. So I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, it's been a nice week. We are back to Arikemis now, and yeah, excited for a lot of ideas that we are having, crazy ideas that we are having. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Danilo had a first-hand experience to see how's my routine. Essentially, we were even joking. We were on Saturday and we went to sort of rest, and I was talking to Danilo. Oh, Danilo, let's rest today. Let's study and work. So I ended up, yeah, I was sort of reading an article about, it's an interesting one. It's about data-driven dynamical systems that I think that Trevor would find this topic interesting. It's about using machine learning to, let's say, do two things. First, to do exhaustive search over, let's say, candidate functional forms for, I mean, you have a series of historical measurements, they can be noisy. There is this hypothesis that there is a dynamical system behind it. So there is this topic of data-driven dynamical system, which is about, for example, using a library of candidate functions and composing them together so that you could search for, let's say, the functional form that fits the best. But there is also a second part, which is about also learning, let's say, any implicit coordinate transformations, because just because you are, let's say, exhaustively searching functional forms from a library doesn't mean anything. A lot of times this is in another coordinate. On the last 2 to 3 years, people had a lot of success doing essentially using deep learning to, let's say, learn possible coordinate transformations so that you could use those libraries. It's a huge topic. Probably this is, I'm scoop creeping right now. But yeah, it was what I was doing on Saturday. But yeah, and you, Xavier, how has been the week?
Hey man, and the hot weather back to São Paulo too. And I try to understand the EthicHub system, following the development that Raul and Danilo did. I try to implement some equations in cadCAD. It's not working yet, but I'm trying.
You are mute, Xavier.
Hello, 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 hello.
Yeah.
And then was this? I stood a lot about the data system, trying to understand the system, and I expect I can contribute with this in the future.
Yeah, by the way, when I was reviewing the EthicHub system this weekend, one of my conclusions is that it's not a trivial system. I even suggest to Danilo and Raul that, for example, it could be maybe a bit more productive, for example, if we take just one element, like, for example, the originator's pool. Try to understand very well just that one element, let's say just the interfaces to one element, because I mean, yeah, it's lots of elements. And for example, there is a client project that I work into that there is one guy that it's kind of a curious situation, because that project has a reputation of being a very complex system because you have lots of mechanisms. And when people ask, let's say, the chief designer of why that blockchain is so complicated, he answers the following. Oh, no. Actually, this blockchain is very simple. The problem is it has lots of simple pieces. It has too much simple pieces. So maybe EthicHub is the same thing. You have lots of simple pieces, and this makes things a bit more complicated because they are all working similar. I mean, that's the problem of composability. And you, how's the week?
Well, running to a swimming pool every time I could, and working on the model. Following your recommendations, I tried to first just put it on text, then like try to do equations. I'm a bit rusty, like it's been years, but I think, yeah, at first I was trying to do like a general thing, but as you said, it's the more you look into it, the more questions you have and the more you have to define, which is good because, you know, it has to be done. But I try to focus on the originator and the mechanisms relating that, and I think we are making progress. We are like today I did the state. More like it's a flow, you know, a flow diagram. But I wanted to share to see if more or less this is what you mean by states and transitions, because like in that flow chart, every time there is a transition, there's going to be a flow, I think. So I don't know if that will be the trigger, but yeah, I concur. Like it's best if we first like have instead of the full picture, just maybe like one part that is interfacing with the rest as a black box or a parameter, and we can. That will be a lot of help anyway. So we can build on top.
Yeah, especially because, for example, if we understand just one piece, we can treat all the interactions with it as being exogenous thing. And let's say the target of a full picture view is to replace those exogenous interactions with endogenous ones. But we can always start with just one element and suppose that everything that interfaces with that is, I mean, it's simply exogenous from somewhere. And let's say the less exogenous factors we do have, the closer we are to that full picture. So the nice thing about that is that, let's say, instead of needing to do everything, you start to have a more iterative approach. Something that, let's say, you go by rounds rather than having everything head at once.
Yeah, and then it's like for implementation also it helps to have like at least the one part very well defined. You can start doing that, and you know it matches with the model. So do you want me guys to like share the spec a little? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to share screen. Can you see the screen? Yeah, so basically this is the text of everything, and I try to like work with the team to you know provide data that are missing. Usually I think people are used to think more on numbers, but not on relationship between those numbers, but still it's helpful to see how things in their minds are going to evolve over time. So that is, I think, what we have to model. So, for example, in the global state, I came up with some parameters that basically, when trying to define flows, you notice there is parameters that you don't know, or is like one of these numbers, basically. So, for example, we will have like a target DeFi placement, like how much do you want to put on DeFi, how much do you want to be of the liquidity be borrowed by the hubs, whatever. And I have some mechanism actions, for example, the liquidation. What I did, like we define agent actions related to ethics. For example, I went back to really understand the originator pool. And there is, I added like one equation that is, I don't know if this is like a stock, but I call it PE, like the total of the originator position has to be the sum of the public, the community staking, the editor staking, and the initial originator staking. All of them has factor that I call skin in the game factor, which is basically like the 20%, 20%, 60%. So the maximum liquidity you can ask is less or for the pool or for the borrowing side. This will be like the interface with the DAI part, is the less or equal than all this stake multiplied by the price of ethics in DAI in the time of requesting. And here, basically, I went over all the stocks. Like you can constrain them more. Like the inflow of staking is going to be at least the skin in the game factor of each of the parts of the PE multiplied by the total. And stake, since we are going to have a lock of, for example, 1 year or something,
Quick question, Raul. That gamma is skin of the game. Could you?
Yeah, it's here. I define like originator skin in the game is like a real number between 0 and 1. For example, initially in Boram and Danilo had to stake 20% of the initial loan request. The auditor.
So,
yep.
One question: that gamma is a behavioral factor or something that is encoded on the system?
I mean, it's going to be it's a parameter related to an agent, but at this stage, I don't know if it's going to be something system defined or just for each agent. But I think
or maybe another way of framing. Gamma is the agent that defines gamma, let's say, or is the system that defines gamma?
It's governance that defines gamma.
The agents define the gamma?
Governance.
Government.
I think, yeah, governance, like, this is like, we thought it was a good initial value, but if we have, the idea is to have all the originators do this. So if you have to change this parameter, I think it's going to be like more of a system decision. Like the holders will have to vote on new parameters.
And those parameters, are they different across agents, or is the same parameter for all the agents on the given type?
I think
because
at least now it's going to be the same.
But they could vary among agents, right?
I think for now they should not. Like it should be the same condition for every agent in this case.
Yeah, because if they are the same across all agents, provided the agent type, I think this is a system parameter rather than an agent parameter. Because usually when we use the agent parameter nomenclature, is a parameter that the agent is going to set. Let's say the participant is going to define his own parameter.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so the same with the unstake lock time, yeah.
Yeah, if we are the same parameter for all agents, then it's a system parameter.
Okay, I'm leaving a note to change it later. I don't know why it's not copying and pasting, but whatever. Yeah. Okay, so it's system parameters. So yeah, according to those parameters, you can define like to model like the lock. For example, you cannot unstake until certain time, T sub U. So if the current time is less than this, the flow is 0, and if not, you can like unstake as much as you staked previously. I don't know if this is the way to.
TU is the locking period.
Yeah, like for example, 1 year or 5 years.
Okay. Okay, go on.
Yeah, it's basically this is the same with different parameters for like all the pools. The liquidation, I defined it as a mechanism, system mechanism. So the liquidation, the trigger is a state change. I think is like if the agent originator goes into a default state because they haven't paid. I don't know how to. Yeah, state trigger. So the amount of like the amount you have to liquidate is going to be the amount that is owed divided by the price of, you know, to be in ethics, because you have to sell it. So now what I wanted to express here is like if the amount you have to liquidate, I mean the amount staked from the originator is more or equal than the amount you owe, only this part is going to be sold. If you need more, it's going to include the auditor, and if you need more, it's going to include the 3 things. Also the community tokens that stake to this originator. Does it make sense?
So this delta P, so let me see here.
The thing is, like, the trigger for the liquidation is not, I know in Kumu we had like 3 pools. Like, will be these 3, but
yeah,
the liquidation is going to be an event that is going to happen at the same time, and depending on how much you have to liquidate, you will use 1, 2, or 3 of them. So I don't know, I thought to like represent it together.
So the flow of the liquidation comes from the pool and goes toward what? I didn't quite understand.
Here, it will go to an AMM. It will sell this. The flow is not well defined. I know that you mentioned, because it's going to be is this one. It's going to be go to an AMM, be exchanged to DAI. I don't know if this is a converter more than a.
Yeah, because maybe what could be, suppose that, for example, for simplicity, we are dealing only with the originator's pool. So the idea is that the originator's pool is going to provide some EthicHubs to the EMM. So the EMM position, the EMM is going to have increased amount of
ethics and decrease amount of DAI. Yeah.
Yeah, by having that, you need to do you also increase the DAI, and that's it, or do we have another action beyond that?
And it's going to go to the liquidity pool.
Okay, that's the balanced liquidity pool, right?
No, that's going to be, well, I'm trying not to go into implementation details, like where it's going to be or something, like the pool where the originator is borrowing DAI from this pool. So, and the originator has a debt with this pool, so it's going to cover that debt. If that makes sense.
Is the AM that always requires the liquidation?
Can you repeat, please?
Is the AMM that require the liquidation from those pools?
No, the AMM is the instrument to exchange ethics to DAI to be able to cover this. There has to be like a mechanism that detects if the originator is defaulting, and it will trigger this action. Like my attempt at state diagram, I used Google Draw because but it's a little maybe not the best looking, but the idea is for an originator, you will have these states. First, you want to request a loan, so here will be like the just stake originator pool. This now you have to wait for the auditor to stake in your favor, so the auditor will stake. Now the community, you have to, if you raised your enough capital, so the 3 pools will be full of ethics now, and then you can ask a loan request from this pool. So you can have this. If you have a loop of repaying and asking for more loans as long as you're within your limits, and if you don't pay on time, you enter a default state, and then you're going to be liquidated. When you're liquidated is when they're going to sell this to like this flow here, where to like.
Yeah, could you send us the link for that Google diagram?
It's here. It's in the agent state.
Yeah, that's an interesting diagram. Just before, before going to that diagram, another question about the liquidation. When there is a liquidation on the originator pool, that interaction with the MM, are we actually putting ethics on the MM pool, or are we swapping so that we put on the liquidity pool, on the DAI liquidity pool?
right now we are using the Balancer AMM or the Uniswap AMMs where we have liquidity to do this. I'm not sure if it's going to be like implement. How should we implement this? I don't know if we will have to have like a balancer pool that is going to be used as a lending pool, or we can use just like the pools we have. I'm not really sure of how that will work.
But what do you agree that liquidation is essentially a swap operation for covering liquidity on another token?
Yeah, that is what it is. You swap ethics for DAI and then send it to another contract, saying like you are repaying.
Yeah, okay. Was that clear for you, Danilo and Xavier?
Like if you want to see it in code, I can like try to like it's implemented already. Let me originator. 1 second. Basically,
which
for example,
you asked?
Sorry,
Danilo. Danilo asked.
No, I asked if the liquidation process was clear for both of you. What it was in a sense.
The diagram illustrates better the process.
Yeah, this liquidated here will like this will be the swap here. I don't know if maybe this. I don't know if you guys know Solidity, but like here, basically, what we're doing right now is like you get from the compensation reserve transfer to this contract. This contract does a swap requiring exact amount of DAI out, and then you send it to the other address to cover for that. So it's,
yeah. For me, it's clear. Just the trigger part. I wanted to look again how that liquid is triggered, but for me, I think it's clear. I just want to recheck.
Is trigger what like if basically it's a function of there has to be I don't know, like for example here in the your originators pool DAI, I think we should have another stock here that is like the borrowed borrowed DAI, sorry. So if the borrowed DAI is, like if you haven't returned your, no, I don't know, maybe it's not. Somewhere we have to take into account how much you owe the pool. I think here is like the loan, or we got, yeah. Repayment here is like you have to repay the principal plus the interest.
Then maybe it could be a comparison between the expected amount in the pool by that time, versus the real amount. But the problem.
Sorry.
Because if it's not,
I cannot hear you.
You're on mute, Danilo.
Okay. Because if the pool are not separate, let's say I didn't put more collateral, so I put more DAI. In that case, will I be liquidated or not? Like
you're breaking. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, let me try to go outside.
Yeah, I'm going to take the camera off, maybe.
So my question is that if it's only one pool, let's say that I didn't pay back today, but I put more ethics, so I have more DAI available on the pool because I can borrow more. In that case, yeah.
The amount of if you stake more, if you stake more ethics, as is think now, you will not be able to get more more DAI until there is for example, after a review period. It's not like in Aave or something, because you are I mean, if you, the thing is, we have to motivate you to pay on time in DAI. So if you pay on time in DAI, it's okay.
Yes. For example, let's say there is a situation like this. I borrowed 100, right? But I only took out 70.
Then your debt is 17.
So yes, but there is still 30 there. So in case I don't pay back, will that 30 count as me paying back, or not? Because
should
be still some DAI there.
Yeah, I mean, if you owe 17, the thing is you will be liquidated for the thing you didn't borrow. So if you didn't ask, you have a maximum capacity of having some debt or borrowing. But I think if you didn't use it fully, you shouldn't pay for what you are not using. So if
I see.
To answer this, I think they will sell the ethics just to cover some. Sorry.
So for example, if I have 100 and I only borrow 70, they will first start deducting the 30 that I have extra, right?
That is a good question. My idea was you have to pay 70. The other thing you didn't borrow, so you don't owe. It's reserved for you, but you didn't use it. So it's not counting interest. It's not the pool should not be expecting you to pay those 30.
So in this case, the liquidation should not be in the pool size, but the borrow and payback.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes it more complicated or not.
It's it should not be based on the pool size, but it should be on the borrow and payback. Yeah.
It should be in your borrowing.
This is a question I had, because when we are comparing pools,
but in this case, I think we shouldn't see it as a pool. It should be like the stock of borrowed DAI you have. The liquidity pool is for all the originators, but as you are an originator, you borrow something for you. So that's what I was wondering, if we should have another stock in the middle that is how much this agent borrowed.
Yeah, what do you say, Danilo? How is it would be that when you have, because these are basically accountings or balance, right? How do you model balance comparison in this?
How you compare balances across different tokens?
I think it's the same
price oracle.
Yeah, price oracle. But there is also the thing that when you deal with price oracles, you also have a volatility risk, because the price can keep changing.
Sure.
So, for example, there are a lot of systems that they do make use of some parameters, like, for example, a liquidation ratio, something that, let's say, gives a bit of flex in regards to the... But yeah, it's never a easy task.
Yeah, I mean, here we will have a collateralization health or something, and I think the next step after we model the originator is going to be can the general compensation reserve of 50 million tokens, act if the borrowing position of the originator is lower than expected at time of liquidation. But the thing is, in the system, usually when you are in Aave or when you are responsible for your your borrowing capacity is basically your collateral price, like your collateral value. So if the collateral goes down, you're going to be liquidated. But here, the liquidation will happen not if the collateral goes down, is if you didn't pay back the DAI. I don't know if I'm explaining myself. There is a third thing that is in play. But yeah, the volatility is a risk for sure. That we know. Like the idea is to see how can we improve or like have certain parameters or certain flows that help with that.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I think this is somewhat, I mean, this is somewhat extrapolating a bit, let's say, our target of, let's say, understand just one pool at once.
Yeah.
So let me open here again. Are you speaking, Danilo? You are mute.
I think the image is frozen.
Yeah. So let's open here the next thing. By the way, guys, do you have any questions about that?
From to transform like a simple model into code, like we did, last week we did. Yes, it's not unmuted. Okay. Hello.
Actually, you froze for the last minute.
Hello. Is it working now? Okay. Okay. I was just going to say, I'm going to Danilo's camera. Wait 1 second.
This is trippy.
Because what I was is that of time, I suggest that Danilo goes through the process of coding a simple part of the model, so they learn how it is. Just like last week, Danilo made a simple equation of one part, and that was able to make Raul get through all this, de você dar exemplo de uma parte para que o Raul possa usar isso como base, so that Raul can use it as a base to progress even further and Xavier even further, just like we did last time, because I think we only have a few minutes more. That's what I was going to suggest.
Okay, so let me put here my headphone again. So yeah, guys, do you think that is a good approach? I could try to do a mini hackathon, a mini 10 to 12 minute hackathon, and see what I can get.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Okay, so I'll share my screen here. By the way, that's one of my hobbies, live coding. So what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to have a MatSpec window here on the left and a Google Colab on the right. I'm going to create a new notebook. I'm going to import some cadCAD and so on. And my target is going to be essentially to try to model whatever we can about the originator pool. So I suppose that the description is already here. I'm also going to open the Kumu here for the text, just in case. And yeah, let me put everyone here. Okay. So first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to install here a library called cadCAD Tools because it makes a bit faster to prototype cadCAD modules. And also, I'm going to install cadCAD. I'm going to pass also here capture so that we don't have those messages polluting the notebook. I'm going to call that maybe EthicHub originator pool. While we do that, it can be useful thinking about what are the primitives of cadCAD. Essentially, there are 4 things that we need for a cadCAD module. Variables, parameters, logic, and also the simulation parameters. So yeah, so the initial state, which are our variables, is going to be a dictionary. So there is also the parameters. Is also a dict. We are going to define that soon. And after that, we have, let's say, the model logic. Model state and params. There is the model structure. The model structure is essentially the partial state update blocks. This is going to be a list. For now, I'm not going to put anything there. And we have a block here for running a simulation. And okay, so let's try to think through that. So first one, thematic hero hacking is not handy for some reason. Let me see why. Okay. So first, I need to understand what are the actions associated with the originator's pool, and also I need to know what are also what's going to change. So I think that the most obvious one is ethics. Let me see here. Ethics in originator pool. So I think this is the most obvious variable that we have. So I'm going to suppose that it's going to start with 10. Actually, it's ethics. There is a pattern that I like to use. This cadCAD tools is a library that I built at some time before, but it contains several boilerplate things that helps a bit quality of life. So from cadCAD tools onto preparation, import initial state, param sweep. Yeah, so initial state is so it's going to start ethics. But this is sort of a trick that I do for, let's say, for using Python type hinting, because on that way, essentially I'm defining here that, let's say, we have an initial state that has value of 10, and the type is ethics. This is really just for documentation. And let me see here. Type dict cannot be instantiated. Why that happened? So I got a mysterious error. Let me think what's that.
The equal sign.
What?
No. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a strange error. So yeah, why is this happening? Oh, I'm going to do another thing here. So maybe this is a dict and okay, I got you. Oh. What if I do that? Okay, that's well, I'll use the traditional definition for now. I think this is faster. So ethics is in originator pool. This is equal to 10 ethics, for example. This is just for simplicity. And when I start building models, I always like to try to think about, let's say, the primitives on the model first and trying to think through the logic afterwards. So for example, this is one variable. Let me see here other things. So we know here that the interactions associated with originator pools is stake on stake, yield, and liquidation. So we have 4 actions in the end. We have stake on stake, yield, and liquidate. So one way of, let's say, encoding that would be to have, for example, a partial state block that is something like that. So that would be, for example, the name of that is the code action. We would have some policies in here. I don't know a priori. And we would have the variables. And this is going to update the ethics in originator pool. And I'm going to put here a description. So right now, I'm just writing pseudocode, really. I'm not writing useful code. I'm just, let's say, using Python as a convenient notation for pseudocode. So the description is giving a stake yield liquidation action. And I'm going to put here 3 comments so that I can have multiple lines. Update the originator pool. So the idea here is that the originator pool is really just a stock. But we have those actions. So those actions of staking, unstaking, and yield and liquidation, they are essentially events that are being generated. You do have agents that are triggering them, or maybe the system is triggering them, or you can simply inject. They do have some rules of, let's say, how to, for example, if an agent stake, it cannot be higher than that. If not, you are going to need an error. So when you decode the action, you must enforce that this is true. Same thing for is unstaken, same thing for liquidation. But at the same time, it triggering those events, it doesn't happen at the originator pool. It's a thing that, let's say, happens outside that decode action policy here. It would happen, for example, maybe at, I don't know, maybe we could have a partial state of this block here, which would be, for example, label. That would be agent staking and unstaking. The description of that would be, for example, generate stochastic actions for staking and unstaking on the originator pool. So that would be one way. And the thing is, when we, for example, this agent staking is what we call the behavioral. It's what we call a behavioral component. Because the decode action, we are going to let's say encode here what we know about the mechanism. So let's say everything that happens here must be deterministic, because this sort of replicates the smart contract logic. The agent staking, this is a behavioral model because there is no smart contract for, let's say, describing what the agent is going to do. The agent simply decides to do or not. So this is, so usually we model behavioral models by using stochastic process, or sometimes we use a stochastic process that, let's say, has conditional probability, in the sense that, for example, if there is a lot of rationality to the agent, so his probability of staking or staking can increase. Does that make sense for you guys? Okay, variables and so the agent unstake, we need to generate some kind of signal that's going to be picked up here on the decode action. So perhaps would be, let's say events, or better, current triggers. So maybe we could. I think that we should have this variable called current triggers. That, let's say, as we do our simulation, we can have several triggers that happens on each time step. And the idea is that, let's say, this decode action is going to process any trigger that has happened on that round. And that trigger can have several sources. It can be, for example, a deterministic event. It can be something that's randomly generated. But anyway, I think that we should have that also that variable here. So current triggers is going to be known. So I think that those 2 blocks here, I think that they should be enough for having a simple model of the originator's pool. Of course, we need to implement here, for example, the logic for that is originator pool. So perhaps we could start with that. So as originator pool. This is going to be a function that needs to be defined. I had not defined that yet, so let's put here. So def as originator pool, and there is the there is the params, there is those two that we never use, there is the state, and there is the policy input. This is going to return ethics in originator pool, and also, let's say, the new ethics in pool. And this new ethics in pool would be, let's say, old ethics in pool plus delta ethics. And the old ethics in pool would be simply the previous value, so ethics in originator pool. So essentially what we need to define here is the delta ethics for each one of those actions here related to the originator's pool. So for example, state. So let's say, perhaps we need to decode here the current triggers. So for example, if state current, I'm going to put here triggers. State current triggers. If triggers is not known, then we do something. Else we simply pass. Ethics. Okay, so if we don't have any trigger, delta ethics is going to be 0, and the originator pool is always having this, is going to have the same value. So we could go here, for example. So we need to define those current triggers. This can be a bit tricky. So let me see. Maybe we could understand that current triggers as being something like, for example, that. So let me write somewhere. So example of current triggers. For example, let me see. Yeah, I think that we should have a list because you can have several triggers at once. By the way, those are always design considerations. There is no right way of doing that. I'm just pulling anything from my head. So that could be a list of dicts, for example. So for simplicity, we could have, for example, something like I think that we should have a tuple actually. So for example, swap stake 5, or for example, on stake 10. I'm going to use here a triple comma so that we have multiple lines. Okay. And we could have also another action, like for example, liquidate. And do we have specified that ethics yield action somewhere? How, Danilo?
The ethics yield action, I don't think that is, you actually reclaim that from the incentives pool.
Okay, so
the claim rewards will be not from this pool.
Okay, so I'm going to suppose that we only have the stake and the liquidate actions. So for example, if triggers is not known, and then for trigger in triggers, if trigger 0 is stake, then we have something. Else if trigger 1 is unstake, we have other thinking. Else if trigger 0 is liquidate, we also have something. So I'm going to get the first element here. So for example, if trigger 0 is 0, so what we need to do? So we have here, so first thing is that the stake can be anything, provided that it's below that number. So let's put that. So if actually I'm going to put here, trigger value is equal to trigger 1, and trigger type is equal to trigger 0. Going to be a bit more prolix, but at least we have a bit more self-describing code. So for example, let's go for the first one. Like for example, if a value is below, let's say, gamma PE, then let's say delta ethics is value. Else, something must happen. I'm going to pass it here. And of course, we could also, actually, I could pick that delta ethics here. And so what we need to do the same thing is here. So for example, stake, where it's simply that delta, liquidation as understand, it can be also anything. There is this PO here, which is simply a representation of what's the ethics in originator pool in any point in time. So actually, let's say having a logic for the originator pool itself, it's not hard. It's really about just decoding those events. The thing is how we generate those events. So this is going to be a bit more complicated because it can be behavioral or it can be inspired by the other mechanisms. Yeah, especially because, for example, those events for originator collateral, it can be triggered, for example, by the, let me see. So originators are humans. Public originator stakers are also humans. So yeah, on stake will always require a behavioral model. No, there is no way around that. And behavioral model, you could think, for example, as being, for example, at the beginning, you have lots of stakes, and then you have less stakes. So you could think about, for example, a stochastic process that has a higher probability of stake at the beginning, and this decreases over time. And of course, this would be related here to the agent staking and staking. So let's say I have put, so for example, suggestion. Staking could be larger at the beginning. And decrease with time. Let me think here about other things that could be done here. So, by the way, I'm going to put here some flags here. So, for example, to do. There's also here to do here. And for example, those probabilities about the stochastic process, or for example, things like, for example, gamma. So I can't even put that here. So let me comment that. So gamma, for example, could be 0.2. A stake here doesn't require any parameter. Liquidation, as I see here, also there is no parameter. Yeah. Anyway, that's a starting point. And the idea is that once you have those participative blocks, at least 2 of them, and you have those done, you could use the cadCAD tools here. So let's see. We'll start his run here, and we could simply pass that at the F. This is a pandas data frame, by the way, and this would be, for example, state, params, time step block. And time steps would be, for example, 50, and samples would be 5. So yeah, I try to, let's say, compress as much as possible in 15 minutes. Maybe it was a bit dense, but let's say if you guys, for example, want to have a computational model about the originator pool, that could be a starting point. And once, for example, you are, for example, comfortable with that decode action here on this agent staking, there are some next steps that you could do. Like, for example, think about more sophisticated behavioral models here, or perhaps, for example, not only you have the originator pool, but you could also try to think about, for example, including the auditor pool, or maybe the behavioral model of the originator collateral could be associated with, I don't know, maybe you could have exogenous process for the price, for example, ethics versus DAI price, and you could try to associate the originator pool, or better, the action here, with also the DAI movement on the originator pool on DAI. So those are some thoughts. It's a lot of work. It's not those kind of works usually requires weeks or even months to do. But yeah, I hope that I don't have scared you guys. I'll send the link here. I'm going to share that on the Discord channel too. By the way, I'm going to have a commitment soon. Do you guys have any questions about that? Or especially because this is going to be the last session, because next week I'm going to go to the extreme north of Brazil, so I'm going to be offline.
Too many questions.
For me, it's fine. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that I sort of bombarded you towards the end, so sorry for that. But I hope that at least I gave some ingredients.
Yes, for me it's fine because I have a lot to cover yet. It's not just
But it was a cool guide to know how to map the definition with code.
Yeah, and the thing is, go one element by a time. If you have the originator pool and you have a behavioral model, that means that either you can have a even more sophisticated behavioral model, or either you could include a second pool. And the more variables you have, the more pools you have, the more you can make your behavioral models richer. The more you can, for example, compute metric over them. So that's why, for example, that guy said, oh, this blockchain is not complicated. It's just that there is lots of simple pieces. Because the more simple pieces you have, the more possibilities of connections you can also have. So and also it increases in a non-linear way. It's actually I think it increases by a factor of order.
Danilo, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Maybe a good thing would be to share some of your previous work. I know you probably recorded a few of this process of transforming models into code, equations into code, or if you have other examples, because I think just like you did now, even though if it's for other types of model, this process of transforming equation into code might might bring some insights, even if it's from other projects. What do you think?
I'm not sure if I have a video, because usually that process of transforming equations into code, usually when you are on engineering design contest, usually you allocate lots of time to first specify mathematically exhaustively, and just after that you go to the code. Doing that in real time, let's say, it's not exactly common. But some things that could help is, for example, there is a lot of tutorials over there about modeling dynamical systems. They do involve, for example, taking mathematical specs and turning into code, and also doing experiments on them. Usually people that do well on dynamical systems, there are lots of videos out there, usually do well also on that.
What do you think, Xavier, about for next steps? Maybe starting with this code, start just trying to build this pool in having a feedback over for example, you try to build the simple pools we have, and I can probably give you better feedback over the code than over the mathematical.
Yeah, I think that the next step is really to, let's say, I have put some to-do comments. It's really about, let's say, making sure that the to-dos are filled up, and try to hunt the model. If that's possible, if you can hunt the model, then you can start to make it more complicated. Like, for example, improving the behavioral model, introducing a second pool. The thing is, start small and let's say increase the complexity gradually. And if possible, let's say, if it's possible, for example, to do that in a guided way, in a way that you specify mathematically before and then you do the model, usually this makes things a bit easier. But it may happen that sometimes it's easier to specify directly on the code. So there are a lot of styles on model building. So yeah, any more thoughts or questions before dropping out? So yeah, thanks guys. It was a pleasure to do all two sessions with you. I'm going to upload this recording to the playlist as usual. And if you guys need, I'm on the channel, so feel free to ping me or to ask anything async. And we'll see. There is the chance that we are going also to have maybe Sean as a mentor next session, or perhaps Raul could also take that role. But yeah, let's keep the Slack as usual. I'm not going to be able to be present at next week, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but still, like for me, if you guys want to keep going, I'll be here. And let's try to communicate on Discord and keep this going.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Danilo, and good luck with the record.
You will stay alive.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, Xavier, you plan on keep going with Raul on this?
I will going with the code. Is this code that Danilo made now? Seems like what I started made. So I will keep going with the code.
Okay. Please just write me on Discord if you have any questions about if the assumptions are good or not, just to keep it more like fluid.
Okay.
But if you need a meet, let's try it. But if not, see you on Wednesday. But let's keep working on this asynchronously.
Okay.
Sounds good. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
See you.
Yeah.